Okay, so we have now the Pyxis Falmagira. This is also an Umayyad piece, a little bit later than about 200 years later than when the Great Mosque was begun, although we know the Great Mosque was added on to over 200 years, so these do overlap a little bit. It is a Pyxis, meaning that it's a container. This is a lid. It would come off, right? And it is made of ivory, which of course is a precious material. We don't make things, we try not to make things with ivory anymore because we know where it comes from and what happens. But it's a precious material. It's also very easy to carve. And so you can get really all of these incredible details. All these little black dots are actual holes. They're not painted little black dots. So this is really an amazing work of incredibly detailed craftsmanship. You'll also notice people, right? So when I mentioned before, aniconism, the prohibition of human figural imagery in religious contexts, that does not apply to every aspect of Islamic culture. Okay, this is not a religious piece; it's a secular piece, meaning not religious, and therefore we can have people showing on it, right? So a pyxis, a cylindrical box, it's in a cylinder, circleish, with a hemispherical lid, right? Okay. And usually these kind of boxes are used for cosmetics or perfume. Okay. So remember why perfume might have been important back in this day and age, right? This is before the invention of, deodorant, et cetera, et cetera. So perfume's kind of important, right? This is a gift that was made for the son of the Umayyad Caliph. Now, I mentioned Caliph earlier when I was talking about the Great Mosque of Cordoba. And a caliph is a self-applied term here. Now, normally, the term caliph was only or was limited to the political rulers of Mecca and Medina, which are the two holiest cities in Islam. But here we have this Umayyad. We know the Umayyads moved from Palestine, from Damascus to Spain, and so in order to assert their legitimacy, assert their power, they assign themselves the title of caliph here, which is pretty gutsy. And so on the box is an inscription. We know that writing is a elevated. It's a very elevated, like the style of writing, descriptive writing is an elevated art form in Islam because there's so much emphasis placed on writing, especially because of the prohibition against figural imagery in religious contexts. There's a great emphasis on the beauty of handwriting, in this case, carving for writing. The script says God's blessings, favors, and happiness to Al Mughira, son of the commander of the faithful, and that's a reference to his title as Caliph, right? May God have mercy upon him, year 357. Again, I mentioned that there is a different dating system, which is why it says 357 here, and we list it as 968 up here. Commander of the faithful is what we would refer to a caliph, an epithet for a caliph. So essentially, a caliph, going back to that idea, is that he's a spiritual leader, political, but also a spiritual leader. Spiritual because he claims to be from the leaders in a line from Muhammad. So the Umayyads claimed that we not only have political authority, we have spiritual authority here, and the spiritual authority comes from our connection to Muhammad, which is, again, like I said, that is a bold claim for them to have done that away from Mecca and Medina, right? There's just another view. This is a nice view because it gives us a look at the hinge that keeps the lid on when the lid is opened. We know that. Originally, it also had jade and semi-precious stones inlaid into it. I guess those got taken out and yanked out through the years because they're not there anymore. A Pyxis was a pretty common gift for members of the royal or to and from members of the royal family. A gift that was given, gifts that were given in to dignitaries from other areas of the world. These gifts were often given in order to symbolize an alliance between two families or two powers. Gift giving is going to be a really important idea here to keep in mind. We know who that is. We believe it was made in a particular workshop. Don't worry about that, actually. Ivory. Ivory, you want to think about, well, why choose ivory as opposed to wood or as opposed to crafting this in some kind of precious metal? Well, ivory is easily carved, as I've mentioned. It's durable. It's lasted this long, right? You can't melt down ivory and make something else like you might with something made of gold or silver. It has a smoothness and it's quite elegant. Why is ivory important here? Well, because the Umayyad dynasty had a trading agreement, an exclusive trading agreement with powers in North Africa, and that's where the ivory came through, right? We don't have elephants in Europe. And so they made it so they made the agreement so that the ivory was only available to them. So it was a very precious material, and they had a monopoly on it. Remember that they had been kicked out of Damascus, and they had been kicked out of Damascus and lost to the Abbasids. The Abbasids. Why is this important? Well, we mention this because the whole Pyxis is covered with images relating to the conflict with the Abbasids and also asserting the Umayyads' power and legitimacy as a dynasty, as a caliphate. So even 200 years after they were, after they left Damascus, this still is a continuing kind of relationship, some kind of continuing conflict between them. So what do we have here? Decorated on the Pyxis are what we could 8 lobed medallions, 4 of these 8 lobed medallions. Now recall the Great Mosque of Cordoba, and you recall the Maksura, right? And how those had really those arches with the many lobed arches. And so these are very similar, right? It's not just a simple arch, right? It has these multi-lobed aspects to it. So you might kind of think of that this is a roundel. It's not a roundel, but remember, as a roundel is something circular with decoration in it. But instead of just a simple circle, it has these really, really 8 lobes, which makes it obviously more intricate. There's more places for the eye to go. This side we have 2 lions attacking 2 bulls, right? Again, we're here and the lion is attacking the bulls. The lion would be a symbol of the Umayyads here in this case, in order to assert their legitimacy, their power. It could be also a reference to a children's story, trying to instruct the young man who is receiving the Pyxis from trying to take over, but that is just a guess. I just have a little bit more to say about the Pyxis of Almagira, and we will do that in the next video.